learning to be a financial analyst, learning about investments, learning about how investment capital is created and how investment decisions are made, and learning about personal family budgets and sharing my clients' struggles as they look to find jobs and find houses they can afford and educate their children and afford to send them on to college. I became very passionate about economic development because of that experience of working with these families and realizing that was probably one of the biggest things that we could do in this community to solve some of those problems. And so I joined the Arcata Main Street Board of Directors, and about 6 months later found myself in the seat of the president's seat, and also found myself at the helm of an organization that was tens of thousands of dollars in debt with a budget of only $100,000. And some really challenging times. I served the next 2 years really helping to evaluate what our mission really was, how we could create value for our constituency and the community, how we could get the financial ship righted. And 2 years later we had cash in the bank. We had a new agreement with the city that was tied to the city's economic development plan, which I also worked on while I was served on the Arcata Economic Development Committee at the city, and a new staffing plan, and just a really reinvigorated organization. I also serve on the Arcata Economic Development Corporation Loan Committee, where we actually review business plans and look at financials and make decisions about the lending through government programs for small business startups and business transfers. And I also serve on the Workforce Investment Board at the county, where we really study how to improve the training and make sure that our workforce is ready to work, as well as try to identify the opportunities in the future that we need to prepare our workforce for. So I think I have a unique qualification from community development, economic development, finance, and on top of that, I think the biggest skill that I bring to the table as supervisor, basically my entire career has been about helping other people make decisions. Transportation infrastructure is, I think, one of the cores of what government should be about, providing that infrastructure. We all benefit much more broadly. You mentioned the benefits to businesses as a whole. It makes the businesses more competitive, more profitable, more efficient. We have environmental benefits from lower cost transportation that are less dependent on fossil fuels, not to mention future innovation that's going to occur in the future. That's why we subsidize the roadways. That's why we subsidize the airports. And there's going to be a shift as fuel prices rise. Airports are going to become more and more costly and less feasible. We're going to be looking at other alternatives for shifting. Same with trucking. So I definitely support that, and I would certainly fight as supervisor for any dollars that were available through the transportation system.
I guess I've gotten used to that. So subsidy to the rail, why not? If the rail is ever going to get out of Humboldt County, it needs to be subsidized. So, that has to happen if that rail line is going to be affected south of Humboldt County. I actually feel like we should focus on the rail locally and get it going locally, and stop trying to fight with Marin, Napa, Novato, Petaluma, because they want light rail on that line, and I don't know that we're ever going to get freight on it with them fighting with us, maybe 100 years from now. So I just feel that we need to focus on the rail in Humboldt County, and to that effect, eventually we'll all be looking at light rail, because we won't be able to afford to run the buses. So light rail is something I haven't heard much about. Do you benefit the local businesses? Depends on if the rail runs or not. If it runs, it could be a benefit. If it's not running, it's of no use. And so I would like to see something happen somehow, whether it's tourists between Samoa and Arcata, let's get something going, or whether in the big picture we have a light rail or freight leaving the county. The fiber optic, the current consideration for path of fiber optic is north of here and east over to the trunk line that runs up 5. We currently have a line that comes out of Santa Rosa That's our fiber optic that we have now. Trying to be redundant is not going back down that same path. It's getting over the mountain and hooking onto the main line that's going up 5. I've been in all the discussions for years now, listened to all the stories, and you know what? I used to sell fiber optics and design systems in 1972, so I know something about it.
That's one of the purposes of government, is figure out what things are in our common interest. To get there, we have to make sure that it's feasible, that the use justifies the investment in it, and so we have to make sure that we answer those questions. Benefit to local businesses, definitely. Our businesses here have huge issues in being able to move product out of the area, bring in materials and move product out. That's a huge issue. We need to look at this within the context of other things. The Richardson Grove project is something that obviously a lot of our local businesses need to be able to move product, again, to reach those markets. Short sea shipping, as I said before, and as I'm getting really good at saying, despite having a problem with S's, that's something that, again, I think is something that would provide a huge benefit to local manufacturers, local producers, local businesses. The fiber optic thing, number one is let's make sure we don't lay it in the same damn trench. I think that would be bad. The rail line, I think that's a potential option. We could look at that. We need to look at the other areas that we're going to be doing this. We need to make sure that it's someplace that's easy to lay it, easy to maintain it, and make sure that it's not someplace that's more likely to be taken out again by either operator error or landsliding or whatever it is.
Okay, there's 3 questions there. First, how do I feel about subsidized rail? Subsidized rail on the from the public sector, there's a tremendous amount of options there. You know, the federal government, the state government, and private enterprise coming together. I think that the question is kind of misconstrued here. We need to have port development. Port development in turn coordinates with rail development. You can't have an empty ship come in here and expect to pick up goods that we're producing here. The goods that they bring in here, we have to be able to transport out of here. Okay? Local businesses would benefit tremendously from the rail. 90% of the goods and services that come into Humboldt County have to come in via the highways. When we go to the fiber optic, there are more options than just going down the rail. We need it, and we need it now. We have right-of-ways such as PG&E, gas, that we can utilize before we look at the rail.
And I think, one of the things that I am focused on are what are the building standards that we use. I mean, I think it's surprising that we don't have a green building program in Humboldt County. We don't have aggressive energy standards. We don't have those types of policies on the types of infrastructure that are light on the land. And that's really where my priorities when it comes to land use would be. And so, consistent with the development of those policies, it changes the way we look at the way we zone and plan for future development. When we have good policies that would allow us to mitigate for some of the negative impacts that we try to adjust for in the general plan update process, it really changes the equation. And I think we have to be very careful about the impacts to infrastructure, especially transportation and the sewage infrastructure. But I think we need to be thinking outside of the box and really looking at other infrastructure technologies that are more attached to land and less dependent on an industrial scale, urbanization types of strategies that we're basically reliant on. And that really all 3 of our alternatives that we're looking at are based on that industrial treatment of waste and provision.